we're live. It's the local support meeting on its new bi-weekly schedule in between the sprints that we're now doing. We have Matt, we have Brent, we have Sam. Yes, I have not prepared extensively for this meeting, apart from just feeling very enthusiastic about it. It's been an emaily day sort of day. Yes, I'm glad. We're now in an admin week. We just had a sprint on the NHS project last week, which went quite well in various ways. And we're looking forward to doing the same with local support next week. And so that's one of the main items on the agenda, is to just make sure that we're all planned for that sprint, because that was feedback that we got in the retro that we did on Friday, all about the previous sprint. But let's do the thing that we often do at the beginning of these meetings, which is just check and see what other agenda items might exist in the minds of the people who are also in the meeting with us. Matt, so any local support business on your mind?
Sorry. No, not that I can think of at the moment. I'm still trying to get like caught back up in what I should be working on. You know, in these weeks in between. I haven't thought about I thought about website one, but I haven't thought about local support outside of the context of I'm really excited to sprint on it. And I mean, yeah, I guess maybe if I'm wanting to add something. I had some questions about the Doku stuff that we're going to do next week for the sprint.
Mm-hmm. And indeed, well, I think we could then, yeah, we can also note that out. We can get into those as part of the sprint planning. Brent, anything particular on your mind?
No, not really. I find myself with a spare half an hour in my schedule, so I thought I would say hello and see how things are going. So yeah. Just so that I don't get too far behind when eventually I'll have some time to help out again. Yeah, well, it's always a pleasure. Yes, hope everything's going well with your big project. And we're moving forward. I can't say it's going well, but we're moving forward. Progress of a kind. That feels like our NHS sprint last week. Yes, there were definitely. Yes. We got stuck in various places. At the end of the week, we managed to snatch some small victories from the jaws of total chaos. But excellent. Yeah. Yes. Well. Well, on that note, then, before we dive into the sprint planning per se, let me just mention some other things that are going on that are kind of related. So I have arranged to have a client meeting next Thursday with the client, which is Rachel. And I thought that was like, it's good to check in with her. And I usually would arrange these kind of meetings, like the plan is to arrange meetings in the admin weeks rather than in the sprinting weeks. But I thought, since it's the local support sprinting week, the critical thing is we're getting feedback from the client. So I've fit that in there. The client has also started hooking me up with other local charities, which is something I've sort of been suggesting to her for a while, and suddenly there seems to be a little thing of them getting hooked up with other local Harrow charities. One of the things, so both the local support project and the NHS project have had this kind of weird thing from my point of view, that I've always felt like I can't actually talk to the people who are supposed to be using the system. Right, like in the NHS project, it's kind of like the commission is the ones we're supposed to be influencing with the wiki, but I generally can't get access to them to find out if they're actually using it or not. And similarly with the local support, is we're supposed to be kind of influencing and supporting local charities in the Harrow area, but I can't seem to manage to engage with them successfully to actually find out if they like it or not. Yeah, that's interesting as well, because it's going back months now, but I try to reach out to some of the other charities to try and find a better way to integrate their requirements into the site, but that they didn't seem to want to talk to me either. Yeah, so it's good that it's good that that's turning around. So what's happening is like as early as tomorrow morning, I'm going to the Harrow, there's the Women's Centre, and because they are having some technical trouble with some stuff,
that might involve emails and websites and stuff, and we've kind of identified that it will probably be, yeah, like easiest for us to work out what's going on if I'm actually there. So I'm going to go in and help them with the technical issues, and I can't find the website anyway. But I've also said to them, oh, I also have this other idea, which is doing a local charities podcast. And the idea is to talk to small charities and have like a chat for half an hour and turn it into a podcast series where basically we just hear from lots of different local charities, because I love talking to people, meeting new people, and I love for some reason I love recording everything and exposing it on the entire web for very, very few people to absorb. But that's obviously I'm working through that in therapy. But yeah, so they were in. I said to them, yes, I'll come help you with tech stuff. Would you like to be on a podcast? And they were like, yes, that would be wonderful. So that's kicking off. So that's, and I can use the opportunity of fixing up their tech stuff to mention the site to them and get their details up to date and this, that, and the other, which is what I'd always sort of planned to do. The other thing is that there's two other things. There's like a Harrow Parks people who apparently like need websites. There are also there's like the Harrow colleges who have students wanting to do IT volunteering, and these are like 17 and 18-year-olds who like want to learn about website development and stuff. And I'm now potentially going to go and have like a little their volunteering fair, have a little Agile Ventures stand, telling people how they can get involved in Agile Ventures and helping with local charities and websites and stuff like that.
Cool.
So we're also the new project we're doing. There is live. We're doing a Harrow Woodcraft, which is another local charity website in Jackal, no less. And sort of actually we've got the web dev mob people involved, and then basically I think that there is, I think that they need help with website and email. So sort of the plan that's forming in my mind is to be able to kind of like have more and more connections with different local charities and be kind of scaffolding, like, anybody who wants to get involved in helping them build them websites. For example, some of these, college students, or, I've got the web dev mob. We have various mothers whose children are at school and have free time in the middle of the day. And yes, so does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, cool.
So that's got on there in the background. So that's, we'll pop that out the side. But so the sprint planning, the key things that Matt and I have talked about previously that the sprint should be about is trying to move from Heroku to Doku, Azure.
I like your choice of words. Trying to move.
Yes,
not moving.
I mean, it's like, I'm being realistic. It might take more than one sprint. That's
that's related to my question, but
yeah. The background here is that we are currently, what is it? We pay something like, I don't know, it's like $20 a month. But it doesn't matter, like 20 a month for Heroku hosting. And I'm not sure that we get, we do get kind of like a nice interface, but we're not really, the site's doesn't have much traffic. Well, in particular, as I mentioned before, the client, this seems to be very rich for the client's taste. I mean, in fact, we're doing like this Harrow Woodcraft website, and the quote that they got was £58 for the year. And so I kind of immediately undercut that by saying we could do it £50 a year. But this is, interestingly, I don't know, there's very different parts of the world, there are different expectations about how much you'll pay for hosting and site and support and this, that, and the other. So basically, at the moment, this is an expense that if we could move over to Docker Azure, that would be a nice thing to have, not leaching out of our revenue stream for a while.
Although that does bring up another question. It seems like we're getting towards the end of our credit, and what happens when that happens?
Yeah, there's also limits on credit in Docker Azure. So we kind of, but we have been like creating like lots of boxes willy-nilly, and they can be clear. I think the grant we've got from Microsoft is pretty generous. We just need to make sure that we're using it effectively, particularly on those projects that are kind of generating either leads or revenue for us or what have you. So yes, and I think even if we were just paying for it in Azure, I mean, Heroku's providing a service on top of, if they're like a platform as a service. So we're paying a premium to have the web UI, the web interface, and all this, that, and the other. Which, if we were had thousands of people paying lots of money and what have you, that would be fine. You'd pay the premium to Heroku for the convenience of the devs, having access and so on. But that's not the case with this this system. We have already migrated Met Plus from Heroku to Docker Azure successfully. So, I mean, we've actually already got it working. The thing that we're stuck on is currently the DNS, domain name stuff. Stuck on DNS stuff with the 123 reg provider client is using. It's one of those things where it's potentially we could just have it working the first day.
Could you not just speak to the client about transferring it to a better provider? Because transferring it is generally free, isn't it?
Yeah, we could do that, and I think the client would probably go for it. I guess I would love to just spend a quick check that we're not just doing something silly first. But yes, that's absolutely, I don't think the client would have too much problem with that. And certainly if we can't figure out in short order how that's working, then that's what we should do. I mean, given that we've then hooked that up, there's then checking that everything else works and so on. But yeah, that was sort of the sticking point. If we're lucky, the rest of the stuff then is fairly smooth, like we've found from Met Plus.
So for Met Plus, you didn't have a Docker file, but you don't need for Docker. That's optional.
Yeah, and similarly for LocalSupport. Yeah. So that's the interesting thing about Docker is it will work perfectly happy with a GitHub repo without any Docker file, and it will kind of basically under the hood it will create a Docker container for you and stick all the stuff in there, but it doesn't actually need the explicit Docker file.
Yeah, but if it does notice that you have a Docker file, then it will run the Docker file. So like now
maybe
that it has a Docker file, maybe that will make a difference.
Yeah, it may screw it up. It may make it work better. We just don't know until we try. Yes, I'm not sure what. I mean, this is the interesting thing about Docker. I'm not sure what advantage the Docker file has versus the non-Docker file. They're just equal options. If there's some benefits from having, presumably you then have more control over the Docker container that Docker is running under the hood if you are using a Docker file. But anyway. That's all good fun stuff to see, and if we were lucky, this could be something that we kind of largely work out in the first day. I mean, there's the complexity here compared to Met Plus is that we do have this multi-tier system where we have like develop .haro cn.org.uk, and then we have the staging and the production, and there's getting them all set up, all running, and then like doing the data transfer. Although because the site is not particularly active, I mean, this is still be much simpler than doing website one. So
isn't develop already on Docker though? I think one of them is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the one. So we've got the developed code on Docker, and it's kind of running, right. I think, but we haven't got the. I was trying to set up develop like this, and I've failed to get that to work. Whereas I got it to work with Met Plus with a different provider.
Right.
So
okay.
Yeah, that's the little sticking point there. That's staging and then production. So there's then, assuming that'll obviously be done in the first hour. Once in the copious free time that we've been created and the huge cost savings that we've achieved in the early minutes of the sprint, there's other things to work on. There's this fun charity commission stuff. I floated, I believe, Brent, with the client about the idea that we can basically kind of, you know, assume all the old org data is out of date.
Yep, and just pull it through the API.
Just pull in new data from the API. So even if we didn't automate that, just doing that as a one-off activity to refresh the organizations in the system would be great to do that next week. I would
I sense that your preference would be to automate it though.
Oh, I think in the long run, yes, I mean, see, we did it as a one-off like 5 years ago when we started the site, and you know, then it gradually got out and out of date. I mean, it would be, I mean, Brent's blazed a trail like across the various bits of the process of doing this for it to then become updated so that it could on a monthly basis, you know, repeatedly update from the charity database from the government so that it was always up to date. That would be outstanding. I mean, that we could just like leave that to plug and play.
Yeah, I think that's the end goal, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But obviously, we can do that on the Thursday, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Is that much more? Is that much more involved than doing like communicating with the GitHub API?
It's more difficult because the government doesn't provide kind of like an API endpoint like GitHub does. The government provides a dump of their SQL database like once a month, which is a file that you have to download and then pull apart and run a load of Python scripts on in order to transform it into data that you can use. And then Brent and I together, we wrote an API that can sit around that data. So we actually have got the we've got an API for that that's hosted on Docker Azure, and we've created something that can be used like the GitHub API, but and that bit can kind of be automated, but it's exactly the same as the GitHub API communication. But that previous bit, which is the ping the government website once a month, grab the data, do that pipeline of transforming it into the right things to update the Charity Commission API wrapper that we have. That's another, you know, like pretend it's one of those ones where it's like, yeah, it's all doable, but you never know where there's going to be little, you know, kind of confusing blocks in it.
Yeah, I think there's still a bit of work to do on the conversion scripts, because we rewrote those conversion scripts in Ruby, or I did, I think.
Yes, I think you did.
Because the Python ones weren't working. They hadn't been maintained, and they weren't working on the latest data sets.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that's probably, you know, even if we got it all automated, there'd still be like things where the government, I think what's happened there, as I say, Brent, with them going out of date, is that over time they're changing the schema on their SQL database, that SQL Server database that they drop the dump for. So then there's those scripts have to be maintained. So I mean,
one thing I was thinking about that is that because we're running it in Azure, do we have the ability to run a actual Microsoft SQL server?
Conceivably.
Because if that's the case, we can there are tools with SQL Server that will directly duplicate the those binary, well, they're not binaries, are they? Those dump files that come out of, because they're actually created using an SQL Server command line tool.
Yeah, I mean, that would be something to look into. I mean, I guess the issue there would be we would then be trying to maintain an API on top of that, which is not, I mean, we've got some people talking about wanting to do C# and .NET projects in the.
We could just put in there is because I've done this at work, you can use Microsoft SQL Server with Ruby's normal active records system.
Right. I guess you can just use it as the database under the hood instead of Postgres or what have you.
Yeah.
Yes, that would potentially simplify things, wouldn't it? Yes. You could sort of run it as a SQL Server microservice, and even then wrap. Yeah. So yes, that's a good idea. Something to look into. What we've got to try and do with Azure is try and work out where the pain points are in terms of pricing.
Yeah.
So yeah. And another thing is if we get all of this working, what I would like to start, what I'd really like to start trying to do is where we have an automated pipeline advancement process, where if things are on develop, then basically every 2 days they would get moved from develop to staging to production, to kind of like remove. At the moment, to move things from the develop stage in production requires my manual intervention. But if we could have it so that, you know, it was set up so that it moved across along that process automatically, I think that would avoid me forgetting to do it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, using something like Travis CI or something.
Well, the funny thing is that it's
or Jenkins
like
or something.
like all of these Travis, Jenkins, Circle CI, whatever, they all, you know, they all advertise this ability for your, you know, when you push up, you run the test automatically and you can deploy, right? But there doesn't seem to be anything that we found, and we've looked. I mean, you know, it may not find it, or it's come up since we last looked, of saying, right, on a given, like on Monday, we want the code, the develop branch to be merged into, to be rebased into staging and pushed to staging. They don't.
We could do that. Yeah, we could do that in Ansible. That's really easy as a scheduled runbook in Ansible.
Okay. Yeah. And is Ansible a CI system, or is
it's just an automation system, and
Yeah.
it's open source. In fact, the AWX, which
Yeah.
is the GUI, like the web, it's all container based as well, which is ideal. That allows you to create what's called playbooks or runbooks. I can't remember what they're called now. But with the AWX version of it, which again is totally open source, you can then have those runbooks run on a schedule.
Right.
But you can also have them run on a schedule as long as some criteria is met. So it will run. It will check that things are like it. You can get it to check that all the tests are passing or whatever. And if everything's green, it'll go ahead and then do what you want it to do.
Right, and you can execute. Yes, I mean the thing that I was thinking, that sounds very interesting, and I don't really know. So something to look into was just to use cron jobs under the hood to do that, because basically there's a sequence of commands that I use. I mean, at the moment, it basically involves me doing git, like checkout, develop, and then git check or git pull. Origin.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, you could just write a shell script to do it. I think the benefit of Ansible is that it's got a huge repository of like plugins, or well, they don't call them plugins, but there's a plugin for Git. So if you want to do things with Git, or if you want to do things, there's probably some for Docker, to be honest.
Sure.
You know, there's things like if you was running it on DigitalOcean, there's things for DigitalOcean that. So you don't have to write all that script yourself,
right?
And you just write the actual instructions of what you want it to do in HAML or YAML or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And then it is a nice system.
Oh, cool. Well, that's definitely something to have a look at. I've heard the name before, but I've never used.
Yeah, it's now owned by Red Hat, so it's Red Hat's version of Puppet or
okay.
It's that type of DevOps tool.
Right. Interesting.
And they have a paid for system which is called Ansible Tower. But the Ansible AWX is the community version of that.
Interesting. Cool. So there's 3 things. I mean, I'm not like I'm eyeing this and this as the higher priorities, whereas this comes from, I've talked before in previous meetings about, this is sort of a request that's coming from our primary client. I mean, it's not the end of the world if we're basically absorbing this cost for them at the moment. So if we fail to do this, then, you know, that was okay, fair enough. There's also sort of a secondary client who's observed how all the organizations are out of date, and it would be nice to be able to mention to our secondary client, oh yes, we've you know, so even if we might only do a single one-off update, that's, you know, and we don't completely automate it, then that we can still get a win there for the secondary client. Is also releasing the events functionality. And other things include cleaning up the PRs, the board, etc. One of the things that was potentially a downside of the sprint last week, at least the way that we ran it, or it was like just Matt and myself from the beginning. Other people joined, but we were sort of like single threaded mainly. Potentially a sprint where, like in local support, which I think at least we're having everything in Git and it being Rails and stuff that people are more familiar with, it's easier to break down tasks into separate pieces and then hand them out. So you know, we've got options in the way that we run it next week, Matt, is that we could just say, all right, this is a plan. We start here and move through just you and I. We could start with the thing that we sometimes do. Someone's burning plastic near me. I hope that's not my computer. Anyway, yes, that we could start by doing the kinds of reviews that we sometimes do in this meeting, and like be doing kind of like the sprint planning process as it's classically imagined, if you know what I mean.
No, I'm not so familiar with.
Right.
I mean, all this stuff is new to me, so classic.
Oh, right. Sure. Yeah. So there's this. Well, there's probably, I'll probably pull up a good diagram. But so let's have a look. Images. Yeah. So there's this idea. No. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's this sort of process here where, like, a sprint that, for example, might last a week or 2 weeks, that you would spend the first day doing sprint planning, where you kind of work through the backlog of tickets, making sure that they're all voted on and adjusting priorities and sort of selecting a set that's going to be the topic of the sprint. And the sprint might have a theme, which is like, let's say hypothetically, it could be the events thing was the topic for the sprint. And then you'd sort of spend the first day or the first half of the first day, or just even an hour or two meeting in the morning saying, right, you know, let's work out which of the tickets and who are they assigned to. And this assumes that you've got like, you know, like 5 or 10 people or whatever. And okay, right. You and like these three, you know, certain pairs have like, I've got this ticket. And then everybody sort of starts working in parallel and they have their daily stand-ups and it carries on, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Cool. So, I mean, I guess you know, we're still prototyping. Is that the right word? We're still experimenting with this new kind of, you know, Agile Ventures sprints. You know, we could get to the point where we're kind of promoting it more heavily and saying, right, you know, like immediately after the first Scrum or after Scrum on Monday, we're going to be doing sprint planning. And so if you want to be assigned a ticket to sprint this week, turn up then and we'll vote, we'll do this, that, and the other. So when I say, yeah, the more classic sprint style, that would be, you know, we would start by trying to make sure that the board is clean, that I mean, not necessarily that the outstanding PRs are dealt with, or that sort of would be a good thing to do as well. But the idea is to sort of kind of, you know, you clear the decks, work out who's doing what, bang, off you go. I guess we just see where we are on Monday, and if it's just you and me in the Scrum on Monday morning, we could still do this and then choose where we want to start.
Okay, I think there possibly like Mike and Joseph and Faith and that crew probably want to help. I just sent a message to our little group there.
Cool.
Our pair programming group. So I'll let you know about the feedback. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I'm kind of, you know, I'm caught in one of these usual points that I'm in, which is I'd love to have lots and lots of people coming to it, and even people saying, yes, we'll pay £1,000 because we really want to be involved in a full week sprint as a learning thing. But I'm also, you know, where we're just sort of starting out, and so I'm kind of shy to like kind of advertise it to like too many people because we're you know, we're trialing this as a thing to do. So.
And we found out last week that we need to be entertaining as well.
Well, especially for Mike, because Mike needs to be. Not that Michael C needs constant entertainment to to maintain his sunny disposition, sunny personality. We appreciate his hard work. So yeah, is that enough of a plan, Matt, for you to be satiated? Did you have further questions about Doku?
For me not to complain in the retro next week. No, I mean, I guess the question about Doku is just about that, about how we have the Docker file, so it seems that it would be relatively straightforward with we have it with Docker Compose, but then I guess in the Doku we would be using plugins for the server.
We already are, yes, and the Compose file will be ignored by Doku.
Yeah. So I guess that's not. I had forgotten that you had like a almost working instance of it on Doku, just that there's that URI issue.
Yeah, well, and I think there's the URI thing, and then there's. I mean, I'm not. Was it? Yeah, almost working is the I think the right way to put it. Like, I think once we get the URI thing, that may then reveal a series of other problems afterwards that may need fixing, or we'll be super lucky and it will just be perfect and rainbows and unicorns. Which I mean, if 30 years working with computers has taught me anything, it's usually just rainbows and unicorns. There's not normally, most of the things you expect will happen usually happen, and it normally works out all right. You don't get stuck for like hundreds of hours bashing your head against different bits of computer things.
It's usually the case that the thing that you think simple goes for weeks and weeks, and the thing that you think is going to be difficult just works.
That's right. It is bizarre like that. I don't know. It's obviously somebody's playing sort of strange games with us. Apparently Elon Musk thinks we're all living in a simulation. So yes. Yes. So yeah, I mean, we could have partly in anticipation of the sprint next week, we could have now a quick flick through the board and or the PRs, to sort of prepare ourselves and just also remind us of anything else that we've forgotten that perhaps we should be looking at next week. Or we could just sort of wrap up there. What do you fancy, Matt and Brent?
Yeah, I'm happy to look through the board if Matt is.
Yeah, I have stuff to do, but I have plenty of time after you all fall asleep too.
Yeah,
I guess like
just narcolepsy thing. We're just like happens all day.
Yeah.
I guess I mean, like besides that issue for website 1 that I'm working on improving the code on, and getting the test. I got one of the tests passing, but getting the other test to pass. Like other than that, I'm kind of light on things I know that I should be working on or can be working on right now. I need to have a look on a LocalSupport website 1. Also, like I guess for I know we're in a LocalSupport meeting, so maybe there's another place for it. But yeah, just in general, I guess I'm getting this, kind of focusing on the talk I'm going to give on Friday and getting ready for the sprint. But I'm kind of feeling light on other things to do besides this. I mean, this GitHub thing is taking more time than I was anticipating. But
right.
So maybe that will just keep me busy the rest of the day in frustration. Hopefully not.
Fingers crossed. Well, if you need other things to look at, I mean, just looking here briefly at the LocalSupport pull requests, we're actually doing reasonably well, I think, in terms of having. I feel like in comparison with some other projects, website 1, and where LocalSupport has been in the past, this pull request backlog, shall we say, is not looking too bad. I think this we could reach out. I think this recurring events thing is a real tricky one. It's and recurring events is like I think a massive performance issue for website 1 that may be the subject of a big sprint there at some point to try and get the site on a different footing. I mean, that's anyway.
Sorry, I'm just jumping. I think that bump PG and bump and that bump uglifier. Those are and the bump RSpec active model. Those first three, those are ones that I think have, they're recent that I can have a look at, because sometimes that's relatively straightforward to get those. The Rails one is something I'm interested in doing, but that's partially selfish on my part, because I don't know how much of a I don't know how much of a priority it is to keep Rails as up to date as possible. But
well, I think it's useful to do. I think as time goes, the further time goes on, the more pressing it becomes, and it's good to deal with these things in a timely fashion. I have been rerunning, bringing us onto these Dependabot things. So yeah, I was sort of going through the saying like, well, so the events thing.
Sorry.
Fair enough. And then I was just gonna, before we came on to the dependable ones, I was gonna look into here, and I guess we had this right. So we've had Rachel working on this, and then it stopped. She's got stuck on a failing issue, and then we haven't had much activity there for a while. I guess I could just pop in a hi, Rachel. Did you have another chance to look at this? Although I think often there is this sort of borderline of people who've come in and perhaps haven't been through the course, and they're sort of, they're happy to make a contribution, but then for a lot of people, like, tests failing and then dealing with cucumber tests and there's a sort of a step too far. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a threshold for contribution, like for some people who they're maybe just comfortable with Rails and can make a contribution there, but then getting it all working with the tests is like a completely another order of commitment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's that on website one, which there's that ticket to refactor the GitHub languages job that Elizabeth grabbed, and we worked a little bit together on, and then her partner helped her out, and they came up with something really nice, and they put in a PR today on it, but it's failing the build. So I'm trying to help support where I can. Like, I think she prefers probably to work with her partner because of the language barrier and just all that stuff. But I'm trying to help support her work through that if she wants.
Absolutely.
But I get what you mean.
Yeah. It's I mean, and it's always a tricky one there. You don't want to like overwhelm people with too many offers of support because they're like, hey, I know how to do this, whatever. At the same time, I mean, that's part of the close the windows because it's so windy. The tricky thing of what we're doing is not having so much background on people, so it's sometimes difficult to know how much support to offer. I think in that case, you have quite a good rapport, or you know quite well. But yes,
although there's every once in a while there's the Janelle Klein that joins, and I'm like, hey, let me know if you want some help with something, and then Federico has to be like, yeah, Janelle Klein's actually a famous.
Yeah, he's like. Which and of course I think she was hoping to like not have that mentioned, so it's kind of like anyway.
Hoping that I would wow her with my Rails skills.
well, actually, she's starting. We might be doing some React pairing with her because she's interested in learning React.
Oh, really?
And you probably know more React than she does. This is the whole thing: is that all these different levels. Everybody's like, no, we're not worthy, but everybody has a multi-dimensional space of things that are their area of speciality. So it's there's that. I mean, that's the beautiful thing when we can. And you have beginner's eyes. We've been talking about this. It's like
yes.
Not everybody has those, and you only have them for a certain amount of time. So it's all fun and dandy, and all to be discussed in great detail in my forthcoming book, Emotional Open Source, which of course is advertised. So let's move on. So we've got those things. I mean, I think potentially. I won't dive in it now, but like this ensure dates are displayed in UK format. We'll see if Rachel gets back to us. That's the kind of thing we could kind of wrap up to get like an early win.
I don't know if this is related or not. This insurance dates are displayed in UK format. Is that because we had the issue with LocalSupport where the edit when we edit the event, it was not displaying the dates, and because of that, it was like not saving.
Yeah, I don't know that it's it could be related. I'm not sure. We can get into it next week.
Yeah. Cool.
But so we've got the Dependabot things. I've been trying to keep I check my GitHub notifications each morning because I don't have everybody. I don't know. I'm like obsessive like that. Partly because during the summer I managed to get look at this. No new notifications. In the summer I was so craving interaction with English speakers that I just went through all of them. And but so yeah, I've been coming in and I've been merging in. Like we can probably see like signs of these are. I think I've merged quite a lot of these. So there have been some updates that have gone through. Usually they seem to have required me to kick off the CI like 2 or 3 times. I have a feeling with all these 3 that I've kicked them off 2 or 3 times already. So that might, like, I think Rails and Geocoder like definitely have some, issues.
Yeah,
we'll see if any of those do. So that like I think you mentioned already, Matt. If you're looking for things to work on, coming in here and taking a look at the errors, even just taking the existing error from the CI and pasting it into the thing is. I wish they would automate that, but that's a very helpful thing to do, even if you don't want to dive into like trying to fix it.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm looking for things to dive into. So
yeah, and
it's also something I can getting tests to pass or working through failing tests is something I can do on the plane, which for some reason I hadn't realized that. And I realized it the other day when I was driving in the car going to visit another place. I was like, I can run tests in the car? What?
Yeah, and so there's a general pattern here with these ones. If you can find the current, I mean, when I've rebooted these some recently, I kind of have almost been like, partly because Travis takes so long to like load the thing here, and like then it's like, depending on it's loading faster there, but now there, like even to get down to the error, I'm like stuck. I want to kind of grab I would like them to just be pasting the error into here so that we could see it rather than an X, or at least some portion of the output. I guess maybe there's some problem with knowing which is the bits to. But yeah, so I often find myself in this situation where I'm kind of stuck there. Like the page is loaded, but I now can't see down to where the error should be. That's kind of annoying. I mean, I guess then I can go to the raw log. But so one of the things, of course, is whether the error is an intermittent one or it's like consistent. Okay, now there we go. This is interesting. We've got there. So we've got the error that it's saying. We've already got it set up so that it runs, that when it gets an error, so there was a single one failed, it then reruns that precise thing. So this is the one that's failed there. And I've seen this. So then it's got like it's a VCR issue.
Yeah.
So I've reposted that into some of the other ones already, so I can grab that.
What's the name of the file?
The one that's failing is event location feature.
There. Oh yeah, that's the one I think that's the one I posted saying like, is there a way we can refactor this?
Yeah, right. So yeah, so failing on, and so what if one doesn't want to investigate that? Then certainly one action is to, having saved that one error, to kick off the thing so you can see, is it consistently the same one that's failing each time? But actually, I have a feeling in one of these, let's have a look, Uglifier, not Uglifier.
Yeah, I'm looking at
PG. One of these, I think I did, see here, is that the same one that's failing there? Profile, event location. Yeah. Is it the same one? So I think, yeah, event. So look, I would say there that it's the same one is currently blocking both of these. Both of them that could then be rerun to see if it's the same one fails again. I mean, we're in this funny situation with intermittent. I mean, that's the other big elephant in the room is, the general issue with intermittently failing tests, and then how that's related to VCR, Puffing Billy. I'm having a chat with various people on the London Ruby users group at the moment about approaches to VCR and managing this stuff and so on. So that's something else to look into beyond, like, there's that, as you're mentioning, Matt, that one particular test that we're perhaps having issues with there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just when it was written, like I don't know. I mean, if it's intermittently failing, then it seems like not. But maybe it's just we can update or write it in a better way,
But yeah, absolutely. Maybe
more
that. Yes,
reliable way.
yes. Or also, there's this ongoing thing about if it's using VCR, then it may be working on cached network interactions that maybe sensibly, probably, if it's being ridiculous, we should like throw out those cached things and re-record them and see if that ends up being more consistent. What I would love is a system like Dependabot that would basically go through each of our tests in turn that use VCR and push in a pull request with the refreshed things, so that we could basically, in the same way the Dependabot keeps us, doing that, like we would be doing the same regular updating of VCR stuff. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Would love, but that could almost be an open source project in itself. Would love to have a Dependabot for VCR. Puffing Billy. Okay. So yeah, that's a nice quick look through. Well, not so quick, but a nice look through the outstanding pull requests. We did, I think 2 weeks ago, we did actually look through the board and have a bit of a cleanup. I think we started at the top of the current iteration there. Shall we maybe just start at the bottom of the backlog this time? Just to see how far we get. So here, come on, open. Thank you. Smoothing the onboarding process.
It's something I'm interested in for Linux users. I did help 2 people get set up when you were gone with Linux, and there was a couple things that they noted that I needed to help them get through. But I asked that's one ticket that would be nice if they would want to work on it together, since we're both Linux users, and they both said, yeah, that sounds good, and then disappeared.
Yeah.
And haven't heard from them since. So,
yeah. That happens a lot. But yes, so this ticket here, I mean, I've got lots of other tickets. I mean, there's, I think the scripts are kind of cleaned up a bit from where they were. There's still, I mean, there's this sort of nexus of, I guess that becomes another general topic, which is, I guess, the setup install thing. There was this thing that Sigo and I were talking about, which is, it just seems like the CI effectively sets up the entire system on Ubuntu Linux every time it runs, right? It starts with, as far as I can tell, starts with a completely fresh box every time. And that's the process that we want to happen for new people who want to get set up with stuff, right? And particularly if they're on Ubuntu Linux, it seems ironic that we've got the CI doing it regularly for the tests, but not for the humans. So it seems like if we can the install script, which is that even the contents of the Docker file be used by CI, be versioned, and be the one that humans use to set up locally. Go on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's what Docker is.
Right. Although like there's there's a difference in that. So the Docker file is intended to run and install in a virtual machine, whereas an install script you can just run as a bash script on your Linux box, say, and it installs a local instance.
Yeah.
So the CIs, I mean, presumably the CIs are all using Docker file under the hood. I mean, at the moment, it seems like we've got both a Docker file. We've also got a few old scripts for Linux install that people created at some point, and who knows if they're even working. I mean, not on scripts and docs, right? Which are different again from the Docker file. and then we've also got the CI instructions. And all of these three things are in version control, and all of them are ostensibly saying the same thing, or I mean, they're not saying it because they're out of date and they're different from each other, but they're all trying to solve the same problem, which is like, here is the sequence of steps that you should take to be set up with the software. And this seems very undry, does it not?
Yes, sorry. I thought.
It was a rhetorical question.
Yeah, I guess I guess the problem is though is that different people are doing their development in different environments, and I don't just mean Windows or Linux, but some people might be using Vagrant, some people might be using Docker. So I guess
we lose Brent there.
No, I'm just thinking. Sorry, I was just.
Oh, no problem. You cut yourself off there, and I was like,
yeah, and or you like using the local server, etc.
Yes, and it's a real challenge. Absolutely. I mean, I think back in the day, we set up with the Vagrant file and this, that, and the other. The number of people coming in and talking about Vagrant has sort of really dropped off, and I feel like we wouldn't try and support. Docker seems to have replaced Vagrant as far as I can tell. I mean, I think the particular thing, like Dockerfile, is another beast because it's using a different, it's got its own specific syntax, and I'm far too jaded to think that we'll ever have a nice one size fits all thing. I mean, to your point, Brent, absolutely, people are on all different sorts of systems. But I think at the very least, I mean, this was the thing that Sigurd and I were talking about, or Sigurd suggested, is that if we've got like a script called Linux install.sh that we're saying, oh, this is one way of installing local support, then really what we should be doing, the problem with it, it's never being tested, it goes gradually out of date. In order to ensure that our Linux install script, if we have one, is up to date, why not run the Linux install script as part of the CI process? And so when the Linux install process fails then for some reason, the CI will tell us, and it forces us to keep this script up to date. Yeah,
I mean, we will need to be wary of different flavors of Linux because they use different packaging tools and things. So we need to, build that into the script.
Right. Indeed. Or even if it's being hyper specific. I mean, there's going to be like, Ubuntu install. I mean, doing one that. I mean, it's the key thing here is saying like, presumably there's the set of. I mean, the CIs all have their own specific syntax, but they usually just allow you to run certain files. In some ways, if we can just expose the setup that we're doing on the CI and say, here you go, you can use this locally if you're using the same Linux flavor as the CI, and then that, at least gives one script for one group of people before we start worrying about all the other flavors. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is, why don't we just become opinionated and say that the way to get this environment set up so that everybody is working on the same page is through Docker, and then we have. So you have your Docker file and the way to get the actual environment up and running, but then we have separate strips, one for Linux, one for Mac, one for Windows, that says this is how you install Docker. So you go through that, and then everybody is working, on the same page, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, we do kind of have that now. We've Dockerized Linux or Linux LocalSupport, although we do need to at some point, maybe during the sprint, we need to test that on Windows still. But yeah, like I've helped support people doing Docker local development, and I'm not a huge fan, to be honest. But maybe that's just as I said in my talk, which I can provide a link for you if you'd like. I think maybe, you know, part of it was just getting, you know, working out, like starting to use it, you know, for the first time and support people using it. And I think now hopefully there will be less issues. But yeah, I mean, me personally, I like to do things locally, you know. But
yeah, I'm the same, Matt. Yeah, but
yeah. Well, and it's all about where we want the pain points and about how, you know, there's, I guess, for any project, there's this kind of, you know, as regards the install process, there's, you know, the pain level for, like, you know, if you're installing on Windows and if you're installing on OS X and if you're installing Linux, and then all of the flavors of each of those.
Yeah.
And so we've got we know that there are relatively, you know, different degrees of levels of pain depending upon which flavor you're on, related to which extra little thing has to be installed, and this, that, and the other. And then similarly for Docker, and it's then almost this question of assessing, you know, what level of pain do they experience at Docker versus what they experience at all the other levels. And for the new person coming in for Windows, you know, we might say, actually, maybe it is Docker, or maybe not. But anyway, sorry,
yeah.
go on.
No, I was just thinking, what about, you know, how you're doing your different sprints and admin weeks? What about in your in the admin week? You have a number of sessions that, you know, are across multiple different time zones, where basically you concentrate on installing. And you have a session. So anybody who wants to join local support, they need to wait for the, you know, if they can't do it themselves, then if they wait for the next, like, iteration of, you know, like, I don't know what you'd call it, but where that, you know, you get 3 or 4 people who have got problems, and I guess over time, because we get to see all of those problems, we can document them, and over time the actual installation process setup process will get better.
Yes, that's a good. Well, and I think what you said is maybe like the install sessions that you had in the admin weeks could be required. It's like, if you want to take part in the sprint, come to the install session there. Yes, absolutely. And I think it's, you know, we can. It would be nice to do, as you're saying, like, to be able to say, like, look, we recommend Docker, but also, well, you know, if you're an experienced OS X, Linux, whatever person, here are the instructions for those things.
Yeah.
And I think the difficulty we have is, to a certain extent, we do have these. The difficulty is sometimes that is making sure that the pain that people are experiencing as we help them through those things, that gets translated into an update of the documentation.
Yes,
actually makes it less painful for the next person, and that's a non-trivial thing to link up. But
I think, like, part of the sprint, like maybe next week on these, especially these projects where we have we're inviting the public to be involved, is that part of that sprint needs to be some hours spent on updating documentation. You know?
Sure.
Unfortunately or fortunately, like, and you know, and maybe you know, as a good way for people who are new to the project to get their feet, and, you know, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. Like, I don't know if lots of people are coming in, you know, just wanting to code and are, like, not wanting to update documentation. But, like, yeah, I mean, I can help with that as well. Like, but,
yeah. Well, we've got a chore here for check installation documentation is correct, unvoted in the backlog. Yes. So there's, and I think, yeah, I mean, we've been through. I think I won't drag us through more of those. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I mean, there to sort of end, I might wrap up in a moment on a philosophical note. I think that we do, one of our biggest challenges for Agile Ventures is, I think there's a lot of enthusiastic people who come in and they kind of want to spend time, what's kind of been advertised is the excitement of, oh, I'm going to do some Ruby coding and some Rails stuff or some Node.js and what have you, and it's going to be solving some people's problems. And like, for a good majority of people, the first 3 hours experience is, I'm in install hell. And you know, I mean, in some ways, if the whole thing was like advertised as, become an installation specialist, you know what you want is to become the install wizard, and they would be really excited about being stuck on install things, because actually pretty much that's your entire life as a computer developer. It's only these very occasional bits that you get to do where you program something like in this pure abstract sense before being returned to the installation or bug hell, as we like to call it. But yeah, so there's kind of, I mean, there's this vision of being able to give people the experience, that fun experience of just being dropped into the code place, which, for example, if we had the right slew of C9 workspaces or Codio workspaces or whatever it was, and it's almost like, actually, I'll show you something quickly.
Is that not misleading though? Because like you just said, the real world is that actual coding is 20% of your time.
Yeah, absolutely. But and so that's the thing. So I mean, I think there's two options. It's one, reposition, pivot, and and instead of learn to code, it's like learn to hack bugs to death and install software and get people. That's what they say about it's like, if you want people to build a boat, don't like try and get them excited about building a boat. Get them to like inspire them to yearn for the great open sea. I mean,
I think it's like, it's about contributing to open source, and contributing to open source is some coding and is in lots of other things as well.
And documentation. Yeah. And potentially, a documentation update as a pull request is a fantastic way to get started.
Yeah, that's how I wanted to get started, because it was a bit overwhelming to. I mean, I think my first few pull requests were helping with documentation and fixing.
Oh, it's. I mean, of course, it's so difficult to set people's expectations. But I just wanted to show you this thing that Stack Overflow has this quite interesting thing where, like, as over time, I've got various more permissions. I don't think you wouldn't normally see this, but once you get to a certain level, you get like enabled as a reviewer, and so they kind of now have like some things like here, like the questions that they have in the site that have been automatically marked as low quality or what have you, they're now put into review queues, and it's set up so rather than you're browsing Stack Overflow and you serendipitously find something that's of low quality, they're basically setting it up so they've lowered the bar to, okay, here's a queue, you can just pop it off, here's something you should do right now, like just read this, and if you can think like if you think you can edit it or change it, just go ahead and do it. Do you see what I mean? They've kind of like set it up so that you can sort of drop in there and get working on it in the same way that things like Code Wars and Code Academy, with their online editors and runtime and things, allow you to sort of immediately drop in and start working on a little code problem and then working on the next code problem and so on. So like this is here, right? Like, how can you fix this thing here? And it occurs to me that, I think for a lot of the people coming in, what they would almost like is kind of a bit like a queue of this kind, where it'd be like, oh, here's this documentation fix that we need. Could you just do it for us? And they kind of, do you know what I mean? They just do it with a few little changes, rather than like, I'm in Slack, I have to download the whole. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in local support, we kind of have like our labels, which I've lost. Labels. We've got beginner friendly labels, like it's almost like as if we could have a thing here, like if we're in the projects. This is a very long-term pie in the sky sort of thing. Almost what we would want with it, apart from a very performant website, would be nice, is that you'd come in here and it would be like, here's the project. And when you joined it and it said get started, rather than it's like up to you to read stuff, right? It would come in and it would have, obviously we're pulling stuff out of Pivotal Tracker here, Pivotal Tracker, GitHub, what have you. They would kind of be like, it'd be like get started, and it's like, this is the thing that needs done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you could kind of click onto that, and it would, rather than complete switching environment and then require you to log in a Pivotal Tracker, you'd be able to do some work, just on, okay, here's this, someone's requested this, documentation fix. You'd actually be able to do it staying in there to get like a taste and a flavor of doing that, and just sort of in the same, what Stack Overflow is providing here is just a queue of stuff for you to keep working on.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So something
it's all possible with better organization and coordination,
Yes, indeed. Well, it's interesting. It's a hunch that that lowering the barrier to getting involved will allow more people to bootstrap in rather than the. I don't have strong evidence for it, but I suspect that people being stuck in the kind of for a lot of people, it's like Agile Ventures is too unstructured. Do you know what I mean? It's like Slack chat, you have to like ask people to find out what to do and so on. Whereas if there's just a queue and you can like next one, and I'll say like, all right, I'm not interested in that one. No. And then like here, like Stack Overflow is getting like information about which were the ones that people were skipping and all this data about how their reviewers are interacting with the questions and this, that, and the other. So it's kind of, yeah. Anyway, that's something we can do as part of a future sprint for website one is it's the whole getting started flow. Can we?
Yeah.
I mean, are issues so gnarly that they can't be fitted into these nice little boxes to work on? Sorry, I'm going to stop talking now. Go on, Matt.
I have a couple updates. We have the RSpec active model mocks. I re-kicked off the build and it passed.
Cool.
And the other ones I kicked off and they failed, and I'm kicking off again because they're intermittent failures. Although I do want to have a closer look at that test.
Yeah.
And also Elizabeth said that she was able to get some help from her partner, and that it's passing locally, and she has pushed that up, and it's passed. I think.
Wonderful. That's awesome.
Oh, and she updated the VCR cassette. That's interesting.
Cool beans. Great stuff. Yeah. Well, I'll maybe shall I leave you to do the first review on that one?
If you want, I think you probably have more experience in the because I did a pairing with her, and then I kind of came up with like a simple extract method, and then he has kind of her partner has.
I guess since this is a local support meeting and we're wrapping it up, and I'm going to go to supper. Yes. Yeah. I probably won't be able to look at this until tomorrow, so feel free to give her feedback now. Brent, fantastic to see you. I hope that the project continues to move forward in ever-increasing leaps and bounds of greater success as and when, and if that doesn't happen, it's you're fighting the good fight, which is
Yep, great to speak to you guys again, and
hopefully
we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, we're also turning our retrospectives into podcasts, so you'll be able to listen to the podcast of the retrospective on the local support thing next week.
Ah, cool.
Yeah,
we'll do that. Yeah,
good stuff. All right, guys, great to see both of you. Bye for now.
Yeah, take care. Cheers.
See you.
Bye. Yep. Bye.